Yesterday, Jeff Bell and I talked about players to trade for if you are a contender. And today, we're going to talk about players to trade for if you are rebuilding on your dynasty team. Jeff, go ahead and hit us up with the first guy that you want to talk about, a guy who might come back this year, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, Jaden Reed, I think is really, really interesting if you are a rebuilder right now because, like you said, he might come back. He might come back and play again. But I think what we're seeing in the market right now is I'm seeing a completed trade for 2026 second. You're seeing some guys like Kyle Monongai or Tyrone Tracy, Ricky Pearsall. I feel like I'd put Pearsall in a different category, but he's out there as well as a trade that happened straight up for Jaden Reed. But overall, I think that when you look at when Reed went down, it felt like the Packers had a very, very crowded target atmosphere. They had just drafted Matthew Golden. They had Romeo Dubs, obviously, Tucker Kraft. We all were all in on Tucker Kraft. And even at some point, Christian Watson may come back and play football again. And so it was a little bit of a tricky scenario for Jaden Reed. But then after I watched a defensive back nearly lead the team in targets last night, I feel like the entire environment has shifted dramatically for the Packers. You've got Bill Melton and Dontavian Wicks. Not sure who was the defensive back the way that Dontavian Wicks plays the ball, to be honest with you. But those guys out there battling Jordan Love targets as he's desperately trying to make a comeback. All of a sudden, it looks like, well, we could be peppering Jaden Reed with targets right now in Green Bay. And I think that even if that doesn't flip to that direction, I tend to believe from what we've seen put out in the atmosphere that Jaden Reed is going to find his way into a situation that will treat him like a high volume target earner is my expectation, because I know his agent was not overly thrilled when the draft pick came in for Matthew Golden.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the type of thing, either the Packers desperately are going to have to utilize him in that role as they chase down the playoffs here. We haven't seen Matthew Golden establish himself. Now there's a new injury with Romeo Dubs off last night's game. We know Tucker Kraft's season is over. I mean, this is a Packers team with high expectations and high hopes for the season. They need Jaden Reed at some level. And I think for a contender, it's a good place to buy in on Jaden Reed as kind of being, I think just in general, probably these injury guys are good buys for contenders, because so often they're not contenders, rebuilders.
Rebuilders, yeah. I was going to
Rebuilders.
let you finish before I
Rebuilders, Jeff.
corrected. Yes, rebuilder show. Yes,
Rebuilders, yeah.
it's tough doing them
Yes,
back to back. I know.
rebuilder show.
We gotta switch gears here.
Switching gears, if you didn't see yesterday's contender episode, make
Where
sure
we were wearing
to
the
check
same
out
exact
the
clothes.
actual
Yeah.
contender episode. Yes, rebuilder episode. I just think in general, because so often in rebuilds, people are thinking about trying to get draft picks. Everybody wants draft picks. Everybody wants draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
And our Adam Harstead is one of the sharpest dynasty minds I know. He's made great points in the past about draft picks. The value doesn't really go down in draft picks. Draft picks don't get injured, but everybody wants draft picks. So sometimes that can be hard to acquire if you are a rebuilder, whereas some of these injured players can really be out of sight, out of mind, especially in the middle of the season when people are more of the redraft mindset and they're more worried about having points in their lineup right now. I think you can get some incredible discounts on injured players that will disappear very, very quickly once we get into the offseason.
And we're gonna, I don't want to spoil the show, but we got a handful of guys right now that are dealing with some injuries, which are gonna make for the obvious buys for rebuilders. Get those guys that aren't going to produce off of the contending teams and onto the rebuilding team. So that's gonna be a theme here. But we've also got some other guys that aren't injured that we think are just good buy lows here. But definitely, picking up what you're putting down with Jaden Reed. I've always been a little bit of a Jaden Reed doubter. Maybe for lack of a better term, just because he is so reliant on manufactured touches. We haven't seen him able to move out of the slot. It does seem like he's a little bit limited in that respect, but at the same time, he's a young player who consistently scores touchdowns and makes big plays, and that's a nice thing to have in your fantasy lineup. So yeah, when you start looking that you can get him for a 2026 second or a Kyle Monongai or a Tyrone Tracy, it's one of those where my immediate reaction is I don't want to buy Jaden Reed, and then I see how cheap he's going for, and I'm like, what? Maybe I'll buy some Jaden Reed this off season. So I think that's a good call out. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Jeff first. This guy is healthy. Cam Ward, and I don't know, maybe I should just throw in the towel and wave the white flag and say that Cam Ward's a bust, but I'm just not ready to get there yet. We're halfway through his rookie season, and the Titans have been terrible. The O line just hasn't really shaped up the way that we hoped it would be. Calvin Ridley is just not doing much of anything at all. Like the top two receivers have been two day three rookies for Cam Ward so far this year. Coach was fired midseason. They released Tyler Lockett. The run game hasn't been there. It has really just been a dumpster fire in Tennessee, but I'm still holding on to hope because everything I liked about Cam Ward from his Miami days are still showing up in the NFL. Like he's a good athlete. He's got a good arm. There's obviously some struggles with decision making, and he's leading the league in sacks right now, which hopefully he can get that under control. But what has happened is his value has just completely plummeted right now. And a lot of people are just trying to re-roll and like, hey, give me another first round pick and you can take my Cam Ward. I do that right now. Like, especially if I have what's projected to maybe be a late first round pick, I'd gladly trade that away from Cam Ward. And we see a lot of first round picks getting traded for Cam Ward right now. Some other ones that I saw, Sam Darnold for Cam Scadaboo and Cam Ward. And I think that's a great trade. Like if you are rebuilding right now and you've got Sam Darnold, I'm not saying that you need to trade Sam Darnold away, but I think if you can get two guys like Cam Ward, who has a very high ceiling, and Cam Scadaboo, who when he recovers could have a really high ceiling, that's the exact type of move you should be making as a rebuilder. I saw another one, Bryce Young and a 2026 second for Cam Ward. I don't want to, call anybody a bust, but we've seen a lot more from Bryce Young than we've seen from Cam Ward, and haven't really felt too good about any of that. So I think if you can do that, just like trading Bryce Young in a second for Cam Ward, would gladly do that. Jeff, where are you at with Cam Ward? Like, are you still buying here, or are you a little bit nervous after the first 9 games we've seen from him?
I'm still buying, but I do think that we're in a really interesting window in quarterbacks, especially in Superflex Dynasty quarterbacks, because we're kind of seeing. So we had like the previous generation of like these are going to be the guys with like Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray, like they kind of have soured now here, and then you throw out Bryce Young. You kind of had that Bryce Young, CJ Stroud wave, and Stroud was great his rookie year. Bryce Young was horrible, and but both of those guys, you feel pretty uneasy about those guys in Dynasty. And then we had the prince that was promised with Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams was supposed to be the quarterback one overall immediately, and he was not the quarterback one overall immediately. Would have been the first player to ever do that, but neither here nor there. But you also have Jaden Daniels struggling, injured, so that's going on. Bo Nix some struggles there. Michael Penix has struggled of late, and so you've got just this changing scene of young quarterbacks where, and I think that it used to be, and I remember Kenny Pickett coming out, and the talk around Kenny Pickett was like first round rookie quarterback, insulated value. You have 5 years before they're going to think about moving off of Kenny Pickett, so you can just draft Kenny Pickett in the first round of your super flex, and you've got 5 years to figure it out here for him. And we're like 6 games, 8, 10 games into Cam Ward's career, and everybody's ready to entirely write him off. And same thing with Caleb Williams off of the rookie season last year. We
Can I
all
also
know
say,
what Caleb Williams is now.
you talk about Kenny Pickett, like the insulated value, 5 years as a starter. I did a big study on this a couple of off seasons ago. And like there is some insulated value when it comes to like, ability to start long term, but that is directly correlated to draft pick. And like the further down you fall into round one, the less likely you are to remain a starter. Now, I don't know if that's causation or correlation, but either way, it is very, very apparent. And like outside of your Tim Couch, your Jamarcus Russell, and your David Carr, basically every first round pick in the last 30 years has gotten 80 plus NFL starts. So unless we're looking at Cam Ward as being a Jamarcus level, Tim Couch, David Carr level bust, he's still going to get some room here. Like I don't think that this is the end of the road for Cam Ward by any means. I don't think that he is anywhere near that level.
No, I think he looked a lot better the last couple of weeks prior to, he had the bye last week, obviously, but then fell off a little bit against the Chargers. But I mean, he had started to look better once they got rid of Brian Callahan, and
Yep.
that's probably a big part of it, getting rid of Brian Callahan. And
Getting Shamir
that
DK involved, who has looked really good.
yeah, and I think getting pieces around him, I think some of it, sometimes we struggle to conceptualize what actually could happen in terms of like the pieces that could be put around him. And I'm convinced that the Titans are pretty much going to mail it in until Cam Ward has a tight relationship with Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. Part of me wonders if Titans aren't just going to mail it in until they can get Jeremiah Smith here playing with Cam Ward, but that too out there. But I think it's just really just looking at the landscape in general, and it really hit. Like if Caleb Williams hit in the way that we all expected or were hoping Caleb Williams hit, I think you'd see a different conversation around quarterbacks in Dynasty. You're seeing Drake May. Look how good Drake May looks. And it really only takes a Drake May and people realizing, oh, wow, I missed the boat here. I really devalued quarterbacks. And now, like, this guy's the next Josh Allen, basically, and he's going to be the Dynasty locked in top 3 quarterback for the next 10 years. And I missed that because we saw when in 2020 when Justin Herbert, when Joe Burrow were coming out, like there was kind of quarterbacks were devalued a little bit then. And then it was like Herbert hit immediately. Joe Burrow was Joe Burrow. Josh Allen popped off of that. And there was a window off of that where everybody slammed way back to grab all the young quarterbacks because they could be these guys. And so this is just kind of the what you see in Dynasty. We're still in the infancy phases of Dynasty, I
Yeah.
think strategy as a game in a whole. And so the strategy just continues to evolve in the way that these things are going to be valued. And so often, I mean, so many people have great models out there, but so many of these models shift based upon what's happened. And so you're not creating a predictive model, you're creating a tell me what happened model. And I can tell you what happened without a model. But I think that situation comes into it, but just the reactions of trying to read the market.
All right, Jeff, let's hear about your next rebuilder buy, a guy that you're looking to go out and target right now in the teams that you are rebuilding.
Another hurt guy. We got Brandon Ayuk, another injured guy, but much like Jaden Reed, this is an injured guy that could be playing this year. And I think that sometimes it's kind of interesting because so you could go out and trade for Brandon Ayuk, and we might say, well, he might come back this year. I don't know if I want points in my lineup. If your league doesn't have a trade deadline, it could be a situation where you go out and grab Brandon Ayuk right now, and Brandon Ayuk comes back, is healthy the last handful of weeks of the
And then
season,
you flip into a
and
contender.
yeah, you maybe you traded Adonai Mitchell in a fourth, which was a trade that happened, or there was a 26 second for Brandon Ayuk, or maybe you could trade a young wide receiver that you're kind of ready to sell on in a third for Brandon Ayuk, and then Brandon Ayuk comes back in week 13, 14, and he looks like Brandon Ayuk again, and all of a sudden you've got that contender first sitting out there for somebody that you're in a league that operates correctly and doesn't have trade deadlines, and you can flip Brandon Ayuk for a first round pick, and all of a sudden you traded your rookie young wide receiver you were ready to give up on in a third for straight up for a first. And
Mhm.
I think that Ayuk, Jaden Reed started out talking about him. Some of these players do represent that. The other part of it is they're going to be healthy again. And I think that Ayuk is a player that I expect to return back to the level of Brandon Ayuk from a couple of years ago at some point in time. I think the 49ers desperately need that in their offense right now. And so just buying in on some of these situations, especially somebody like Ayuk that missed really a huge portion of last year, still hasn't come back. It becomes out of sight, out of mind on some level.
And I will say, I think there is like a buyer beware disclaimer with Brandon Ayuk. Like the best case scenario is that he comes back, immediately looks like his old self, and you can flip him or get the production or whatever it may be. But there's also risk that he doesn't come back this year. I mean, like there have been not great reports about him. It came out recently that there was more than just the ACL tear, that there was some additional damage as well. Like he's way behind schedule. Like there was some hope that like he might avoid the pup list and be ready by week 1. And then when that didn't happen, it was like, well, hopefully he can come back mid-season. And now here we are heading into week 11, and he hasn't even returned to practice yet. So I think there is like an important disclaimer there. Best case scenario is that he is back and he's immediately Brandon Ayuk again, but we might not see that until next September. So I think that's at least worth noting that that's in the range of outcomes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That plays into it. It's all risk and really kind of when you're a rebuilder, it's your risk appetite and
Right.
how I think when you're a full blown rebuilder, you should be very have a very risk rich appetite that you're willing to take these risks on players like Brandon Ayuk. I think when you're a little bit closer, then maybe you start to pull it in a little bit.
Yeah. So if I'm rebuilding, I want to take a a big risk right now and a big swing, Malik Neighbors. And I don't think I'm like telling anybody anything that they don't know here, but Malik Neighbors, spoiler, really good at football. Like we were talking about it going into this season, like that he belonged somewhere in that Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb tier. And I put him in a tier of his own behind them at the wide receiver four. But I said, like, really, he should be folded somewhere in here. It just kind of depends how your team is structured and what you're looking for. But like we saw last year, 33% target share, just immediately looking like one of the most dominant receivers in football. And then week four tears his ACL out for the year. But what I have a lot of hope in now is that Jackson Dart has looked awesome. And these guys are going to be tied together for at least the next 3 seasons when he comes back. So this was an early season injury. We expect Malik Neighbors to be back for week one next year. He's going to be tied to Jackson Dart for the next 3+ years. And we know he's a good player. So when I'm looking at some of these recent trades out here, I mean, if I'm rebuilding, you can take him, you can put him on your IR spot. I'm not ready to move some of these other guys ahead of him. And right now, I'm seeing trades for Roma Dunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., straight up from elite Neighbors. I still prefer Neighbors to both of those guys. Drake London, that's a conversation. I don't know where you're at on that one, Jeff. Maybe Drake London over Malik Neighbors. I don't know where I'm at on that one. We could save that conversation for another day. But I see some other trades out here. Devon Achan and a first round pick, and you're getting Malik Neighbors in return. Or I'm sorry, Devon Achan for a first round pick and Malik Neighbors. Like that is an unbelievable deal. If you can turn your Devon Achan into Malik Neighbors in a first, do that right now. Like we'll still be here talking when you come back. Go make that trade. Another one I saw was T. Higgins and Javonte Williams for Malik Neighbors. Clearly somebody who is contending, making a trade to a rebuilder. I'm just kind of shocked to see like how cheap Malik Neighbors is moving for because I'm still looking at him. I mean, especially now with what we've seen Justin Jefferson struggle a little bit. CeeDee Lamb not giving the same production he has with George Pickens. You can make an argument that Malik Neighbors is the wide receiver two in fantasy or in Dynasty right now behind only Jamar Chase.
Yeah, you can make that argument. I might rather prefer to have Drake London right now than Malik Neighbors, but that's a trade that that was out there, that happened. But I think you're exactly right in talking about feeling good about the quarterback that he could be playing the next 10 years with, and then the immediate production that we saw with Malik Neighbors, the feeling that the full recovery should be there for Malik Neighbors. So yeah, I think Malik Neighbors is a great target to go. It's a little bit of the I brought you the Dollar General version of injured receivers you could trade for. Dave just went right to the top of the premium
Yeah.
high level receiver that you can trade for.
And I don't think we need to spend a ton of time here, but like it's Malik Neighbors. Like we know he is a superstar. He should be back week one next year. So I mean, if anything, like you can trade away like a Devon Achan. Like if you are rebuilding, you want to acquire a guy like Malik Neighbors because he's not giving you any points this year. He's going to help you get a better draft pick this year. Then he'll be back next year. So I don't know if there's a more obvious rebuilder buy than Malik Neighbors, but would have been remiss to do an episode on rebuilder trade targets and not mention the most obvious one.
Well,
Jeff, yeah.
some of it too is like this is actually a buy window for Malik Neighbors, where
Mhm.
if you had Malik Neighbors fully healthy and he was out there, the wide receiver two overall in fantasy, we would be having the conversation about he should be the wide receiver one in Dynasty. And what would it take to buy him then? It would take your naming rights to
Jamar
your
Chase
next
plus.
three children and like your 7 first round picks and like everything else. And sometimes you need to recognize that it's even not even a contender situation. If you've got the cachet to go out there and buy Malik Neighbors right now, I mean, you could be a contender that says, I've got a lot of depth on my roster. I'm feeling really good about my high end starting lineup that I can put out there. I'm seeing this other person in my league that maybe I do shoot myself in the foot doing this, but also maybe I go out and buy Malik Neighbors right now and I put Malik Neighbors into my lineup because you're playing Dynasty. And I do think that while we're doing these contender and rebuilder episodes so often, I like to just do dynasty trades and like grab a guy like Malik Neighbors and I'll ask, we've got group chats that we're friends with and I'll great minds and I'll ask them thoughts and there'll be sometimes I'll get the are you a rebuilder, are you a contender, and my usual answer is, well, I'm playing dynasty and
Right.
in playing dynasty and I'm trying to acquire value for discounts and just build the best overall roster that I can build.
All right, Jeff, let's talk about your next buy, the next guy that you are targeting as a rebuilder.
I think we I so I've got four on my list still. And to be honest, I think I can lump all four of them together because really it is a similar theme of what we're looking at here. And it's similar theme of just buying discounts on players that I expect to be in different situations next year. And I can start out with Braylon Allen from the Jets. I would include Rashad White from the Buccaneers in that conversation. I would include Tajay Spears from the Titans in that conversation. I would include Najee Harris from the Chargers in that conversation. I think when you really slice it up, Braylon Allen, young player that's injured right now, we saw some production from him earlier this season, obviously, then went down. I think we talked about in our contender episode yesterday that Brees Hall's probably not long for the Jets. This could be a situation where Braylon Allen, out of sight, out of mind, injured guy, injured backup, who cares? And then he could be the starting running back for the Jets next year with Brees Hall off that roster. So I think it's a good opportunity to buy here low here on Braylon Allen. Lumping Rashad White and Najee Harris together, those are both backup running backs that are going to be free agents. Najee, obviously, the injury coloring his situation a little bit, but these players like Javonte Williams that you never know where they're going to end up, and they could end up in a great situation. And I think Tajay Spears is a little bit of the Braylon Allen conversation mixed with just some uncertainty, where Tony Pollard has a contract that the Titans could be looking to get out of next year. We've seen major glimpses from Spears, and
Is he not a
Spears,
free agent after this year, Jeff?
I think he's got one more year, but I think it's the type of thing where it's a little bit like the Evan Ingram contract where like we're going to get rid of this guy like because we're not
Yeah,
paying
and
this
that's what I
stupendous
see
amount of
is
money.
yeah, they can move on, like, they would have to pay him $9.2 million next year, or they have an out in his contract where they can just move on for $2 million in dead cap, which is yeah, that's one of those where, like, you just kinda look at it like, yeah, there is another year on the contract, but I think we all kinda
Yeah.
know where that's headed, yeah.
And you've got a guy close to 30 and you can either pay him $9 million or $2 million to go away and save yourself $7 million. More often than not, teams are going to save themselves $7 million.
Yeah. Well, I think those are all good call outs right there. What are some trades that you would like realistically be thinking about for some of these guys, like a Najee Harris? You know, I think a lot of people like that's probably the one that I think is going to get the most pushback here because it's Najee Harris and the dynasty community for whatever reason just like cannot stand Najee Harris. And now not only is he old, but now he's coming off of an Achilles injury as well. Like I didn't look at the trade database for this one, but like I'd imagine you could probably get Najee Harris for like a 2028 third right now. Like, I don't think anybody like there's probably a pretty low asking price for him.
Well, I think it gets a little bit complicated because, again, we're doing a rebuilder episode here. So I don't necessarily want to trade draft picks for these players
Fair.
because
Yeah.
I'm a rebuilder. I want to have my draft picks. But I think when you're looking at some of these things on your roster, maybe a guy like Keenan Allen or something like that, where you've got this veteran receiver. What can I do with Keenan Allen? And I think that I present these running backs as a way to say that so often when it comes to somebody rebuilding, they're only looking at draft picks. They only want draft picks. And I have these conversations and people just want draft. My team's going nowhere. I just want draft picks. And it's like, well, I'm not going to give you my draft pick because it's Keenan Allen, but I'll give you this hurt running back that will probably be much more valuable in the future. He's not doing anything for me right now. I'd like to hold on to my draft pick because I'd like to use them for either draft picks or for something more liquid.
Here, and
Whereas,
I can give you a couple examples that I just pulled up here. Like this makes so much sense to me. Somebody traded Marcus Mariota for Najee Harris and a
right,
2027 third. Like I think that that is a great move. Somebody else traded Jalen Warren for Najee Harris and Keaton Mitchell. So not only are they getting like the injury discount on Najee, but they're also getting a young, potential breakout player in Keaton Mitchell. I think those are probably better moves. Like if you can trade a quarterback in a super flex league and get Najee Harris and a pick in return, that's exactly how you do this.
exactly, and some of it's the psychology around the trade. Of You talked about Jacoby Brissett yesterday, and some of these guys like Brissett, where it's like you could offer somebody, hey, like Jacoby Brissett for a 23, like a third, and they would say, well, it's Jacoby Brissett. I don't want to give you a third round pick for Jacoby Brissett and be done with him for a month. But when it's Najee Harris and you're like, he's done anyways, he's hurt. I'm not worried about Najee Harris. And like Mike Evans is a guy that might be in this type of conversation where like people might be saying, what does the future really hold for these guys? There's a lot of uncertainty around these guys. They're not as attractive as a second round pick or a third round pick. But, I could put Keenan Allen into my lineup right now, and I'm dealing with buys right now. And I think this is an especially good window to try to do some of these trades because you get into these buy-mageddon weeks where people are just
Yeah.
putting just joke of a lineup together sometimes. And if you got a contender and you're really stressed about making that last playoff spot or locking down that buy, and all of a sudden it comes along and I've got Braylon Allen and Najee Harris sitting on my roster doing absolutely nothing, and Dave's offering me Jacoby Brissett and Keenan Allen for these two guys right now, and I'm going to play Kirk Cousins as my quarterback because I don't have a quarterback this week, but Jacoby Brissett looks a lot more attractive in this spot here. So I'll just play Brissett and Keenan Allen this week. I'll give Dave my hurt running backs, and meanwhile Dave's saying I've just got rid of two guys that I don't think are going to be worth anything at the end of this year.
Let me talk about the next guy that I think is a good rebuilder target. And again, like, we talk rebuilders, contenders. We try to, like, have that delineation. But I think this guy is just somebody that I'm trying to trade for wherever I can, regardless. Ricky Pearsall, what we saw in a limited sample earlier this year was so good. 2.29 yards per route run is absolutely elite. On a per game basis, he is sixth right now in receiving yards per game, tied with CeeDee Lamb. And I think what you're getting here is an injury prone discount. Like, he was hurt his rookie season. He has had multiple injuries throughout this preseason and now into this year as well. I still think that he is a good, talented player. Like, I have been an unabashed Ricky Pearsall fan since he was drafted. I think this is just a perfect situation for him landing in San Francisco. And looking at some of the trades that have happened for him lately, Kenneth Walker for Ricky Pearsall. Like, I would gladly move off of Kenneth Walker right now. And I know he's a free agent. Like, he's a guy who could boom this offseason. But I think looking at the longevity for Ricky Pearsall, the upside for Ricky Pearsall, I would much prefer him. I saw Justin Fields and a fourth round pick for Ricky Pearsall, Trey Harris and Dylan Gabriel for Ricky Pearsall, Devontae Adams and Juwan Jennings for Ricky Pearsall. These are all trades that I would happily make right now. This is a first round wide receiver who is on a good offense that gets used as the primary weapon when he's out there. We're hearing that he might be able to return to practice this week, and I think that will instantly cause his value to go up a little bit. But even if it does go up a little bit, I got to change that Justin Fields in a fourth to Justin Fields in a third. I'm still happy to make that move. Ricky Pearsall, I think that he has a long, bright future ahead of him, and I'm trying to acquire him where I can.
Yeah, and you talk about value going up a little bit. I think I said this previously, but there really opens up windows where that manager is not saying I'm selling and hurt Ricky Pearsall, just get him off my, at least I'm selling healthy, like some optimism around him, Ricky Pearsall. And I think that fits into psychology of trades too. And I see so often I'll throw a player out as a target and the response I get back is, well, you're buying high on him because he had a good game last week. And like, well, am I
Oh, I
buying
think
high on
everybody
him
wants to
if
sell high, so I'm actually buying
yeah,
low based on, yeah.
yes, I think it's so often, yes, exactly that of everybody wants to sell high. So if I think the value is going to go up from this point, I'm actually buying low on what I think the value might be. Or if it's something that had I gone to the manager with what I was actually willing to give prior to this, maybe that manager says, well, what do you know? Like, what, you get that so often. Whereas if you're coming off a good game, that manager is not saying, well, what do you know? That manager's saying, oh, he just had a good game this week. I'm getting a fast one over on Jeff here in this situation, and I'll trade him now while the value's high, because I don't particularly subscribe to these micro markets that these player values are shifting dramatically day to day, week to week. I think that in theory it's fun to operate that way, and maybe there might be some sites that it really does operate that way. I think when you're actually playing in a league, it doesn't very often operate that way. These little value windows outside of the situation I just talked about a little bit ago of having just a mess of a bye week or just somebody that'll, I'm going to get this backup running back, but at least I'm getting 4 weeks out of this backup running back, some things like that.
And I think, like, we talked about Alec Pierce on yesterday's show, and I think that's the perfect example right now. Like, coming off of a big game, I think a lot of people are going to say, like, cool, now this is my opportunity. Like, he got the touchdown, he had the big game, now he can sell high. But if Alec Pierce develops into a wide receiver one, you didn't buy high. Like you bought low, depending on what he can do going forward. So I think that's that outside the box thinking is what makes you a little bit different, Jeff, and that's why I love doing this show with you. Let's talk about your last target in rebuilders, Jeff. Who's the guy you're looking for?
Yeah, Tajay Spears. I threw him out there a little bit earlier. He is a little bit different, I think, than kind of the Braylon Allen, Rashad White, Najee Harris conversation because we are seeing production out of Tajay Spears this year, and we're
Mhm.
seeing the opportunity could be there for Tajay Spears to take over this backfield as soon as this year. Like this could be the Titans could
I think it already
decide
happened.
we're looking. It might have already happened,
Yeah.
and so this could be a scenario where you're buying him right now as a rebuilder because it's a running back and a timeshare on a bad offense, but maybe it booms. And like we saw last year, where Tajay Spears was a top 5 fantasy running back during the fantasy playoffs. I mean, this gives you the opportunity that you get into those. If you have a league that doesn't have a trade deadline, you could do see exactly what we saw last year, and all of a sudden you're sitting in that championship game, and or the managers in that championship game, you're a rebuilder, and hey, give me a first for Tajay Spears. You plug him right in. He has been a top four running back the last 3 weeks, and you get that extra push to put you into the championship. Because I do see that happen in leagues because those managers in those title games do know that this is the 11th or 12th pick. This is my opportunity to win this league. And I will give you that first round pick right now for this player that could win me the league. And that's one of the reasons why I think that not having trade deadlines in Dynasty is the
Mhm.
right way to operate and so much fun to operate sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna spill my last guy here too, because we can talk about him together. Because I think there is kind of a connection here. Tajay Spears, there was so much of a discount early in his career because of the ACL injuries, and there was a lot of concern about how he would rebound. And Jonathan Brooks right now is a guy that I'm going out trying to buy. Also has had struggles, 2 torn ACLs. Maybe I'm a sucker for still holding on to hope here, but he's just so cheap that you can go out and get him for close to nothing right now. And I was looking at some of these trades. Troy Franklin for a second round pick in Jonathan Brooks. Like this is you talk about it all the time, Jeff, kind of changing your eye line a little bit. Like I think if you just go out and say like, "Hey, you want a fourth round pick for Jonathan Brooks?" They're going to say, what does Dave know that I don't?" But when you start looking at some of these deals, I saw another trade. This one makes no sense to me at all. Josh Downs for Jamison Williams and Jonathan Brooks. I saw another one. Cam Scadaboo Cam Scadaboo and a third round pick for Brees Hall and Jonathan Brooks. He's one of those guys right now that I don't think you can just outright trade for Jonathan Brooks because I think people who have him are going to want to just hold on to him, especially if all you're getting in return is a fourth round pick or something like that. When you're looking for other players and you can throw Jonathan Brooks in there, I think there's a lot of managers out there right now, especially contenders, who would say, like, I'd rather have the bench spot. And if I could just get Jonathan Brooks off my roster and open up extra space on my team, they would do that. So Jonathan Brooks right now, another guy who like it's been bleak so far, came into the league, did almost nothing, retore his ACL for the second time. But I look at Tajay Spears now, 2 years removed from those ACL injuries, and he looks fantastic. And we see this often that, I think Jonathan Brooks, it's been tough for him. By the time we get into next year, he will be a year and a half removed from that ACL injury and shouldn't have any limitations. So, Jonathan Brooks, I'm still going out and trying to buy him. Like one of my favorite running backs coming out of that class. And I think that the ceiling for his long term career can still be there.
We're not going to go to one full year ago because it makes a more interesting point. But so, like when rookies got added to keep trade cut in like mid February, where do you think Javante Williams was in running back ranks in mid February? Keep trade cut.
Mm, RB 46, I will say.
Running back 53. So you're close. Running back 53. Where do you think Javante Williams is right now in keep trade cut?
Running back 18.
No, running back 17. Good job, Dave. You're
I know
right
the
there.
markets.
So,
I know the
um,
markets. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I know
So
how
that's
reactive people
that.
are.
Yeah, That's what we're playing with, and I think too, when I just got done saying that I don't believe these micro markets exist, I do believe big swings can exist in these markets, that especially running backs, because we have seen a push in Dynasty to treat it a little bit more like redraft. We've seen a push in Dynasty, especially the running back position, to treat the running backs like redraft. And so if we're going to treat it like redraft, then buy all the penny stocks right now and then be able to sell them when you bought whatever it might have been in the 2008 market crash. And nobody in this audience is old enough to remember the 2008 market crash, but you could buy penny stocks then that became blue chip stocks in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Like that's Jonathan Brooks right now. Like I still am a believer in the profile, just a talented player, round two draft capital. And we also talked about it like Rico Dowdle. We talked about this on yesterday's show. 27 years old. Chuba Hubbard has struggled after what we saw last year. They drafted Jonathan Brooks with the intention that he would be the guy going forward. And by the time we get into week one next year, he'll be far enough removed from that injury that I think that can happen. And J.K. Dobbins is another example. Like probably not the best example because he just keeps having these injuries piling on. But like it does seem like he has these injuries, and we think, well, that's the end of the road for J.K. Dobbins. And then just like a phoenix, he rises from the ashes, and he's just like immediately an RB1 again, and then he goes down again, and he comes back. Like this is not the NFL that we remember growing up, where it's like a player tears his ACL, and it's like, well, that's a career ender for him. Like we're going to be, I guarantee it, Jeff, within the next 15, 20 years, we're going to see players tearing their ACLs early in the season and returning that same year. Like modern medicine has been unbelievable. We're seeing it with Achilles now. Like an Achilles used to be a career ender. We just saw it with Cam Akers tearing his ACL and returning in the same year. And I think we're getting there with ACLs now too. Like Adrian Peterson really just changed how we look at this injury as a whole. So I know there are injury concerns, but I want to pull it up real quick and I'm going to try to talk and do this at the same time. But there was a point in time where Jonathan Brooks, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I'll correct myself in just a second. But there was a point where he was up there as like a top 10, I want to say, Jeff, in dynasty rankings. Yeah, he was the RB10 when he was drafted, and now he has fallen to RB57. So this is just the reverse Javonte Williams. like you talked about
Yeah.
Javonte Williams going from like RB50 up. Like we saw the exact opposite happen with Jonathan Taylor or Jonathan Brooks. And if he comes out, week one next year and rushes for 80 yards and a touchdown, he's immediately going to be valued as a top 12 running back again.
Yeah, in one of our listener leagues, I had a trade a couple weeks ago where I had Quinshon Judkins, and I don't remember all the specifics, but basically it boiled down to I had Quinshon Judkins, they had Travion Henderson. And if I'm remembering it correctly, I had offered Judkins and Dylan Sampson like towards the beginning of the year, and when like I was kind of like I want to see if I can buy Travion here, and they said no initially, and then it like obviously flipped on the value on Travion Henderson to like they were basically making aggressive offers over and over again of trying to trade Travion for Judkins, and I ended up with a pretty deal that's pretty favorable, I think, for me on that on when I made that deal. And then now we stand Travion Henderson has this massive game against the Buccaneers in his first opportunity as a starter, and Judkins, like, he's been good, but the efficiency's not been great there. And so just kind of one of those things that play in the market, and especially these running backs, these values can just fluctuate so rapidly over short periods of time with running backs in Dynasty.
As Fat Joe likes to say, yesterday's price is not today's price. Things change quickly, especially with these running backs. Well, Jeff, any final thoughts? Maybe some words of encouragement for the rebuilders out there?
Yeah, rebuilders out. Just try to be creative and try to look for other ways of just acquiring draft picks is great. Acquiring draft picks is the way to go. If your league will give you draft picks, then that's fantastic. I do think that we've seen a swing in Dynasty. The way that draft picks tend to be valued now is a little bit more iron fist than it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so you're kind of dealing with that market. Just recognize where you're operating within, and by that same token too, if you're I've seen scenarios where I try to acquire like a Ramondre Stevenson, something like that, and the response I get is he's a second round pick. Like, you need to give me a second round pick. This is a starting running back, and then offer him to your entire league for a second round pick. If somebody gives you a second round pick, congratulations. If not, then okay, let's
And
come
he's not
back
worth a
to
second round pick.
revisiting some of these guys that he's not a second round pick in that particular market. Let's go back to revisiting some of these other pieces that maybe some guy, exciting rookies of 2 months ago that are not no longer exciting rookies at this time might be some of these veterans that have temporary values. Just there's a lot of different ways to add value to your roster outside of just thinking needs to be a draft pick.
You know what I've seen a lot of people do? I forget the first person I saw do this about a year ago, but I've seen a handful of people do it since when they commit to that rebuild. On Sleeper, you have the ability to add a nickname to a player. I'm sure you've seen
Yeah.
this, Jeff. Yeah, we've actually been in leagues together where I've seen people do it, where people will add exactly what pick compensation they are looking
Yep.
for as the nickname, and then it just sends an alert into the Sleeper chat, and you can just say, Ramondre Stevenson, second round pick, Alec Pierce, second round pick, Brandon Ayuk, first round pick, and you can just name your price for every single player. And almost every time I see somebody do that, I instantly see like two, three, four trades go through where they're able to do that because some people might have different valuations of players. So I think that's like a neat trick that I've seen some people utilize over the last couple of years. If you are truly rebuilding, just name your price, put it out there to every single person in your league. And if one or two people bites, that 10 minutes of work that you put in there to, put those prices on players, you got exactly what you were hoping for.
Yes, I agree. I think that that's a good practice to have in leagues. I think that just going a step further than that, and what I've seen, the most successful dynasty managers I've seen will say, I want a second round pick for Najee Harris for not Najee, for Ramondre Stevenson. I'm going to throw that offer out to my entire league. I'm going to do all the legwork for them. All they need to do is push accept on the
Yeah,
button.
that too.
And so many people are in so many dynasty leagues. I I respect and I understand I'm not as much a salesman in my background as you are, Dave, but I understand the salesman approach of like, art of the deal, and I want to talk about the trade here, or like I've got some time in my day, I'd like to talk about trades. I don't have time in my day to talk about trades. If you want to do a trade, bring me your best offer. I'll
Yeah.
give you my best offer. We'll see if we can find some time between, and assume that your entire league is operating that way. I think just in general, because people are in so many leagues, if you want to do more trades, do more trades, do more trade offers, just give real offers. I am so tired of, like, I'll if you might put a trade probably on a trade block, something like that, and maybe you don't label them, and then you get well, what do you want for him? Your best offer. I want you to
Yeah.
give me your best offer. Like, what are we doing here?
And that's the thing. I mean, like, yes, for anybody listening to the show, I do have a background as a salesman, but like, as soon as you start trying to sell a trade to somebody that you lost, like it's over at that point. Like, as soon as like, oh, there's nothing I hate more than when somebody is in my DMs saying like, hey, like, are you interested in trading? Let's Malik Neighbors, for instance. And I'll say, sure, send me an offer. And then they send me an offer, and I go, I'd like a little bit more than that. And they go, well, Malik Neighbors, he's actually coming off of a torn ACL, and they're changing their coach and all these bad things. You're the one that came knocking for Malik Neighbors. Don't try to knock his value to me right now. That is like the most frustrating thing. The last thing I'll say about trading in Dynasty is when you could have a good trade partner, there are a few things better than that. Herms, shout out Herms, one of our good friends of the show. He is somebody like he and I are in a handful of leagues together, and we just like I don't know how it happened. Like I sent him some good offers and he accepted them. He sent me some good offers and I accepted them. And now it's just like we just trust each other. Like we're not trying to get one over on each other. Like we know that we're sending fair offers to each other, and there's rarely even conversation. Like if I see that I have a trade from Herms, I know it's going to be a good offer, and more likely than not, I'm going to accept it, and vice versa. When I send him trade offers, they get accepted. So building that trust with trade partners over time is also just easier said than done. But like when you have a good trade partner that you trust and respect, that's a good thing to have too.
I have that same relationship with Herms. Herms is a great trade partner for me as well. I've got a great trade relationship with Joey, our friend Joey Wright. We've kind of
Corey
gotten to a
Spela
place where
is
we've
another
just
good one.
worked. Yep. Well, Corey has a standing rule. Corey will never do a trade with me. Corey has a standing rule that he will never trade with Jeff. So like it's we're in a lot of leagues, and Corey just never will trade with me, and so that's a standing rule that Corey has. Um, I had other point that I wanted. Oh, venge trades. So sometimes you'll get these situations where somebody just keeps batting offers and they're just not hitting your price and you're just done with it. Look at who they're playing and look at who like and just trade it to that person for just and I will do that because I will just be done with it and I want to send a message and I will look and see how can this most affect this person. They have gotten on my nerves. I'm going to do this. I don't even care if I lose a little bit of value here. I'm going to send a message, and I think that can work sometimes too.
Jeff, I love you, man. Nice and spiteful in your dynasty leagues, the way it should be. Well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to tune in today. We did contenders yesterday, we did rebuilders today, and as always, we'll be back on Friday looking at every week 11 matchup. We have heard you. We know that on that episode we do tend to maybe look at it through more of a weekly lens than a dynasty lens. We'll try this week to make it a little bit more actionable with some of the dynasty talk, but also we're talking about the matchups and what we expect in any given week. So apologize if that show hasn't been like 1000% dynasty focused, but we will try to ring it in a little bit. But I want to thank y'all so much for taking the time to tune in today. We'll be back on Friday with our week 11 matchup previews. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.